Up on the screen now is an image containing the senior members of Patton West's cult criminal racketeering gang, and a couple of the primary beneficiaries, that being her two children. Patton West was breaking bad, as they say, back in the 1970s. She had defrauded Jeremy Samuelson out of $10,000, and in 91 she defrauded Satya out of $6,000. Her husband, Jack West, has been on board for 40 or 50 years and basically a limp-wristed accomplice to Patton West that basically did as he was told. Next on the list is Corinne Coffin. In terms of length of service, she's been on board for approximately 30 years, as far as I know. And she basically has funded Patton West criminal activities to the tune of probably around $2 million or even more. When I was working at the so-called charity for 6 months in 2002, I discovered that Corinne Coffin was passing money through a New York intermediary to Patton West. The reason it was going through a New York intermediary was that at the time there were currency capital controls in Brazil, so Patton West should not have been moving capital money out of Brazil at the time, but she did. Additionally, I learned that Corinne Coffin had left a credit card with Patton West, which Patton West used to fund criminal acts, fund her luxurious lifestyle, whatever. Corinne Coffin used to top up that credit card from time to time. Next on the list is Dr. Julio Williams, a 21-year member of Patton West's cult, who in January 2007 wrote me a threatening letter in a vain attempt to get me to drop my lawsuit against Patton West for fraud, a lawsuit I won in 2008. Williams, in his missive to me, pledged Patton West $2 million to fund her lawsuits against her victims. And Williams also provided a lot of idiot-style testimonials, which were obviously false. He's basically a sycophant. On the screen now are the first of two idiot, lying, deceitful testimonials from Williams, whose purpose is to suck in more victims. Williams refers to his cult gang leader as Om Shri Rishima Adima Mataji. What an idiot this guy is. In the next one, Williams states, so simple a teaching and yet so profound, especially when one becomes the receiver of such experience through the many actions of life. My humble salutations to thy lotus feet. Then we have a statement from Williams, one he posted on Patton West's website in 2005, which goes as follows. I, Julio Williams, MD, have been a long-time student of Soraya Ma, now calling herself the Ascended Master Rishi Devra, and I stake my honor and credibility on defending her personal integrity and establishing the truth. The first one is a newspaper article about Patton West's conviction for assaulting Dr. Cole. The next one is Patton West's arrest for felony theft. The next one is Patton West's arrest warrant for criminal check fraud. And the last one is in respect of the sheriff's sale Patton West was forced to be part of to pay past victims of organized crime $2 million in court fines and interest. Proving beyond any doubt that Williams has no honor or integrity and is a willing accomplice in racketeering, terrorism, and murder. Next on the list is Geoffrey Reynolds. Now, Geoffrey Reynolds only served 8 years in the cult from 2006 to 2014. But during that time, he turned out to be a stellar operative in Patton West's criminal cult, racketeering gang, whatever. Reynolds is a pathological liar, as I've already demonstrated, but there's a lot more coming. Reynolds also announced my murder to the Big Fork Eagle news reporter Constance C., who passed that on to John Nielsen, an IRS criminal investigator who at the time was looking into Patton West finances. You may recall earlier on, once she knew that there was going to be investigation, she instructed her employees to shred all of the incriminating documents, which is why Patton West subsequently posted a couple of pieces from her website announcing that her finances were somehow approved by the IRS. If not approved, she was given a clean bill of health. Then there are two of Patton West's children, Chris Hayward and Anna West. Now, Chris Hayward has a criminal record of his own with the FBI, and daughter Anna West, I show her as a beneficiary of organized crime, and I do that because Anna West was in the cult, appeared at all the seminars and so on and so forth, and had a number of friends in the cult who one by one were either violently assaulted or robbed and defrauded and left the cult one by one. But daughter Anna West said nothing, no statements, nothing. Obviously, as a beneficiary of her mum's business, she's quite happy with her position. Now, on the screen now is a list of so-called fictitious and fabricated employees, according to Patton West. And we should be going to the last one on the list, which is Carlida Finch. But I think at this point, I want to show everybody, particularly law enforcement, state governments, FBI, how much of a liar that Geoffrey Reynolds is and what an important role he played for Patton West while he was involved. Now, in a sense, he is still very much involved because he announced my murder and a campaign of terrorism against me, my wife and children. That is ongoing. Even if it wasn't ongoing, and this applies to Williams, Coffin and Jack West, and certainly applies to Patton West, there is no statute of limitations for terrorism. So let's get on and give some more information about Reynolds, and then we'll get on with Carlida Finch. On the screen now is an article published by the Whitefish Pilot on July 12, 2007. In the early paragraphs, it explains that Dr. Cole was given a restraining order against Patton West. Of course, this doesn't make any difference to Patton West's ability to cause pain and suffering to her victims because her occult weapon is not regarded as a weapon under legal statute. So regardless of what judges or the police say, Patton West just continues with her agenda as though nothing happened. Similarly, when the Whitefish Pilot published an article announcing Patton West's conviction for the assault on Cole, all Patton West did was post a notice on a website denying that this had happened. In the UK, or maybe in New York, Patton West's response would have been treated by the courts as contempt for the court. But out west in Montana, no, nothing happens at all. Which takes us to the next image, where Patton West basically puts a middle finger up to the courts, the police, etc., and just continues with her criminal racketeering business model. Another example of Patton West's contempt for authority, the law, the police, and so on, is I think Reynolds complained to the Whitefish pilot on Patton West's behalf, telling the Whitefish pilot that Patton West never admitted assaulting Cole. The Whitefish pilot issued a statement saying, well, it doesn't matter because there was no contest. She didn't go to court to argue the case, therefore the court found against her. Which is what happened when I could not attend the court. Having moved abroad in 2005, I could not afford to travel backwards and forwards to fight another expensive lawsuit, having won my fraud lawsuit against her, which took me 5 or 6 years to achieve that result. So summary judgments do happen. Patton West should suck it up like the rest of us. On August 9th, the Big Fork Eagle published another editorial about Patton West's crimes in the Bitterroot Valley. However, it was Reynolds who was interviewed, and he was speaking on behalf of his employer, i.e. his cult gang leader, Patton West. In the excerpt of that article up on the screen now, it says Cole managed to pay West $621,484, but it didn't come easy. At one point, Cole crashed out of her IRA and paid West $293,843. Then there's the $50,000 loan Cole got from her aunt, which went to Patton West, and Reynolds handled those transactions. That's extortion. Reynolds goes on to say further down, claiming that several people have been stirring up trouble by publishing untrue allegations about West. Well, they're all true. Reynolds is a pathological liar. Reynolds briefly touches on Rebecca West's attempt to get compensation from the Labour Board, and saying that she was unable to prove a hostile environment existed at Soraya Enterprises Limited. Well, if you've come this far, you've seen just how hostile it was working or being around Devra Patton West. Another lie from Reynolds. Again, Rebecca lost her case because Patton West fielded a number of pathological liars, cult members like Reynolds, to give contrary evidence to what Rebecca West was saying to the Labour Board. The same thing happened with Carlida Finch and Joseph Costantino. Next up are 4 statements Reynolds posted on Patton West's website in July of 2007, basically denying all the crimes that Patton West had committed and blaming it onto other people, including blaming the newspaper for printing the truth. Finally, so that you can absorb this easily, up on the screen now is a timeline of Reynolds' lies on behalf of Patton West. As I have stated elsewhere, Reynolds took to crime like a duck to water. And let's not forget that he announced my murder to the Big Fork Eagle reporter, thinking it was an off-the-record conversation, which she reported to John Nielsen, the IRS investigator looking into Patton West finances, which was a waste of time because she shredded all the documents. Next up is the last person on the list of fictitious and fabricated employees, and that is Carlida Finch. I suggest the viewer pauses the screen so that you can read these documents, because there's a lot of information in there proving Patton West is both a career criminal and or criminally insane. One of the comments that Carlida overheard, which is in her submission to the Labour Board, was Patton West saying that she didn't care if she killed Cole, because as an enlightened being she would be just as comfortable in a 6-foot by 6-foot jail cell as she would be in a $6 million mansion. I hope to put that to the test very shortly. As with other applicants to the Labour Board, Carlida lost her case because Patton West fielded a number of liars for hire from the cult who gave contrary evidence about Patton West. In other words, denying she was violent, denying everything Carlida said, denying everything that Joseph Costantino would say, and denying what Rebecca West said. You would think that these people would look at the series of complaints and maybe investigate just a little further. But no, this is why Patton West only operates in Western states, because they don't have the infrastructure to prosecute white-collar crime, or they just don't understand it. Carlida wrote to the Flathead County Attorney asking that they launch a criminal investigation into these matters and also give Carly some protection. You can see their response up on the screen. Again, this is the Wild West, and law enforcement is a bit thin on the ground and they do very little. Finally, Carlida wrote me a letter about the controller, financial controller. These are labels that Patton West gives people. Reynolds was the financial controller. In reality, they have no control over anything. They even probably have to ask permission to go to the toilet. The idea that individuals in the cult have personal discretion is just dumb. Apparently, Betsy resigned rather being forced by Patton West to do some creative accounting. Now, that was probably in respect of Dr. Cole and the money Patton West was extorting from Cole, which was considerable. Apart from anything else, Patton West took control of Cole's house, which was worth $750,000, and moved into that after she was evicted from somewhere else. We have now arrived at the end of the list of fictitious and fabricated employees. The comment Patton West made under oath in court when being questioned about the assault on Cole and other matters. I have proved categorically that these were not fictitious and fabricated employees, and that they were, like scores or hundreds of others, just victims of Patton West's business model, a criminal racketeering business model. Up next, some bonus material, some more employees with similar stories to tell than the ones you've heard from on the list. As mentioned before, please pause the screen so that you can read each of these documents, and tomorrow I'll add some dialogue to give some context to what these people are saying.
It doesn't matter what is actually true.
That is the truth! You are fucking over a spiritual teacher, for Christ's sake!
Well, let's continue effing over a so-called spiritual teacher by sharing more of the truth. The first up is Betsy Blank, who was the so-called financial controller briefly in 2006. What you're seeing on the screen now is the first page of her resignation letter. But I want to draw your attention down to the third paragraph, and here it is. the actions which took place during the staff meeting held Tuesday, April 4, 2006, the fact that the federal and state employer and employee payroll taxes have not been paid for the months of January and February 2006, the fact that there is in excess of $140,000 in current and past due debt and no verifiable revenue generation to address current and future operating expenses of the business are factors which have contributed to my decision to resign. Betsy also ends her letter by demanding that Patton West not connect with her directly or indirectly now or in the future. Are you beginning to understand why in court Patton West referred to her employees and students as fictitious and fabricated names? Next up is a repeat of the letter or email that Carlida Finch sent to me regarding Betsy's resignation. As you can see above, apart from what was said in Betsy's resignation letter, Betsy was asked to do some creative accounting. In other words, fiddling and fudging the books. Before moving on to the next victim, I want to share with you a quote from the Whitefish Pile newspaper article published July 12, 2007. There are two interesting comments here. The first is that West claims to have been trained in shamanic visioning and healing by Native American elders, and a Cheyenne medicine woman, and was General Patton in past lives. Well, I don't think any of that is true at all. She did go to the Robert Geoffrey School for Energy Mastery for 18 months between 1990 and 1991. That's a fact. Patton West also goes on to claim her gifts can heal people with various illnesses, including leukemia, and she plans to teach what she knows to cardiologists and other physicians when her plan for healing spas unfolds. Well, the only physician that she could possibly have trained would be cult member Dr. Julio Williams. But my point is, if she claims to be able to heal people of illnesses, it follows she could use exactly the same method to make people ill and then charge them for a cure. And that is what she's been doing. Why else would she need a pay portal on her website that can take single contributions up to $500,000? Okay, this is one piece of evidence. Here's another.
It has been said by some that although there appears not to be much money there, she always seems to pull a rabbit out of her hat at the last moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she may have secret resources for her own finances.
On the last event, didn't she say she brought in $500,000?
Yes, on the last day of the last event, which was in July. I was hired on July 7th, so that it was 7 days after that the event happened, and she came in giggling and twirling and grabbed me and said, "I can't believe it, I just brought in $500,000.
Wow.
So I'm kind of wondering from the mid-July to the beginning of October where $500,000 has gone.
Wow.
Because I've seen the grocery bills, and nothing. But Devra's life has improved. She did take a trip to Israel, which was an extensive amount. She made large purchases there of jewelry, clothing.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
her travel.
This money that came in from wherever, we don't know, it obviously came into her personally, and it sounds as though it's being used for her personal use.
Oh yes. She stated strictly, bluntly to me the day before she fired me that she demands beautiful things. That she will only live with beautiful things, and these people will provide her with these beautiful things.
Yes, I suspect that Patton West has offshore accounts in Israel. $500,000 coming into her checking account in Victor would have been noticed. That said, I don't think Patton West and her husband had personal bank accounts there. The charity was their bank accounts, and it had their names on the checkbooks, not the charity's names on the checkbooks. Anyway, we've talked about why would she need a pay portal that could receive a payment of $500,000 in one lump sum. Then I presented a piece of evidence from Kathleen Francisco and Diane Stoner, two employees of Patton West's, about the $500,000 that came in. And here's another piece of evidence in the form of Dr. Julio Williams. Apparently on her Facebook pages or wherever, it was announced that people could attend Sacred Sundays with Rishi at the home of Dr. Julio Williams. Now, remember the Whitefish Pilot excerpt where she was training cardiologists? Well, the only one she has is Dr. Julio Williams. And he's a brainwashed droid, as you'll know from reading his testimonials and so on. So what I'm suggesting is that Patton West meets people in her private audiences or private sessions where they have to pay a fortune to have a session with them. And what I'm suggesting is that having identified a wealthy target, she might make that wealthy target ill and then have them pay for the cure via Patton West Pay Portal, which can receive single payments of up to $500,000. Now, no one in their right mind would actually donate a tiny fraction of that amount unless they didn't do any research and they couldn't read auras. So it makes sense that that pay portal was set up to receive the proceeds of organized crime, basically extortion. And these Sacred Sundays were held at Dr. Williams's home. And I'm sure the fact that he was present when Patton West was trying to sell her wares to her victim, I'm sure having a tame, brainwashed and conditioned physician there had no impact on the outcome of that transaction. On the screen now is an image taken from Patton West's Facebook account, I believe. I want to draw your attention to the paragraph number 3 and the highlighted area. As an instrument of mercy, she offers the phenomenon of divine grace healing for the regenerative transformation of body, mind, and soul, and the karmic resolution of divine dispensation. What a lot of bullshit. But the problem she has is she can't actually come out and say she's capable of delivering miracle cures. That would end her up in court and quite possibly in jail. So maybe having Dr. Williams along was a good idea, but not for Williams. Hats off to Williams, though. He didn't shout at me, scream at me that I was effing over a spiritual teacher. Instead of that, he wrote the above email on behalf of his spiritual teacher. Now, I don't believe I've ever spoken to Julio Williams, not even while I was at the charity for 6 months, because he was a student, he wasn't always around. But because I was posting the truth online, he, a total stranger to me, states that he personally allocated $2 million for Dr. West's defense and legal expenses. In other words, he was trying to persuade me to back off because he was going to fund her to the tune of $2 million. Why would somebody who I'd never met do that for Patton West? Well, the obvious answer is he's a brainwashed and conditioned droid, that's why. If you want to wrestle with me in the legal arena, know that I will do everything in my power to bring you down, Mr. Watson. You will have your date in court. You F with me and you'll meet your match. So far, I've seen nothing from Julio Williams. This was the girl's blouse who sat at the back of Patton West's classes, bawling his eyes out because he was sucking up her message like it was truth instead of just manipulation. As for our days in court, they're coming up soon, but it won't be a civil court proceeding, Julio. It will be FBI, police, state governments all throwing their lot in, and with what I'm going to provide them, I have very little doubt that you will all be tried under RICO statutes. Now, in the last sentence, she says, if you ever saw me heal, you'd be down on your knees crying like a frigging baby. Hold that thought. Which of these two images do you think reflects the real Patton West? Now let's move on to the next victim of Patton West's incredible healing abilities. I'll move down the letter a little and became especially concerned when my very best friend, sorry I can't reveal her name now, came to me days after having been severely beaten by Devra West. She was a mess, emotionally and physically, stated very clearly what had happened and said she was never going back. She was covered in bruises. I loved this woman as my sister and was devastated for her, especially when she didn't pursue anything legally. I'll pause reading this now and say that, Jenny, it was a good thing your friend didn't pursue a legal remedy because I did, and I'm now in my 19th year of occult, hidden, violent attacks, aka terrorism. Let's continue reading Jenny's letter. She looked as though she'd fallen off a mountain and was very stiff and sore. I have never met Devra, never hoped to. I'm happy to report that this woman, my dearest friend, is doing well, and I hope to hear from you. I have actually sent an email to Devra's address hoping to get a hint about what she is up to. I got a response that is fairly formal, but I would be glad to forward it to you if you think it would help. How is the lawsuit going? Well, my lawsuit went fine and I won and got awarded nearly $750,000. But of course, Patton West was never going to pay me anyway, so it was always going to involve the police, the courts, the FBI, and that's about where we are now. Here's a statement from another employee, this time John Mark Young. I won't read it all. Pause the screen. You can read it for yourself, but I'll read the highlighted parts. During my time at the office, I experienced Devra West's volatile personality and demanding perfectionism, dictatorial style, constant micromanagement, and mind control tactics of interrogation and coercion, as well as more subtle tactics using influence, hypnosis, and presumption. I witnessed numerous verbal attacks upon Dr. Cole. These attacks included harsh language and rough treatment in individual personal interactions in treatments called core impacting, wherein Pat Cole endured hours of verbal and near physical abuse continually. Pat Cole would emerge in tears, obviously shaken and still in shock from these psychological domination sessions, only to face yet another in a constant pattern of abuse, every session leading to the next and building in intensity. Continuing on page 2, Devra seems to be using fraud and extortion to extract money from potential supporters by whatever means necessary, using coercion and domination to terrorize them into submission and then driving them out with unbearable psychological or physical attacks, thereby exploiting their shock, shame, and embarrassment to effectively silence them. This allows her to remain free to expand her efforts and move on to the next potential victim. Down the bottom in the green, Devra Patton West is operating a dangerous criminal cult. She has demonstrated a much larger pattern of abuses, including committing acts of fraud, coercion, manipulation, and extortion. And she has been inflicting psychological damage and physical violence against innocent people for several years. Without any boundaries of common decency, Devra West will commit these acts against anyone, especially those who dare to question her methods, defy her authority, oppose her activities, or anyone attempting to intervene in the interest of others. And I believe she will continue to do so against anyone who is unfortunate enough to be drawn into her web. My hope is that this dangerous manipulator, criminal abuser, and general misfit can be restrained simply to protect her staff and supporters as well as the public until due process can occur and justice can prevail again. I have grave concerns for the safety of my friend Rebecca West. John Mark Young. Yet another example of Patton West's magical healing abilities. Now, maybe there was a Freudian slip in that statement she gave the Whitefish pilot. Maybe what she meant to say is, if you ever became an employee or a student of mine, you would be soon down on your knees crying like a frigging baby. Now, this isn't meant as a joke. There are hundreds of victims. I probably have the names of 30 or so, which the FBI and the authorities are going to get via this movie. But John Mark Young spells out her business model. And that's why I use a meat grinder as an image showing the students and employees going in, the money coming out. And every time one of the employees or students tries to get justice at a labour board or whatever, the other ones, fully under her control and subject to the same abuses, provide positive witness statements for Patton West, in other words, lies. John Mark Young states that it appears to him that Patton West will go to any lengths to oppose anyone who contradicts her or challenges her in any way. Even if somebody moves to protect somebody, they are seeing Patton West viciously abuse. Yes, I can confirm that Patton West will go to any lengths at all. As stated regularly, I'm in my 19th year of occult under-radar attacks, aka terrorism, and we'll get into that in big detail in probably number 8. I can confirm there have been 2 attempts by Patton West to murder me. And they're so blasé about it. I mean, Jack West in 2002, when I was actually working there as a consultant, I guess he was briefing me on what was expected of me by Patton West when he told me that those who opposed his wife had a habit of dying suddenly. Now, those implies 2 or more. In around 2005, Lisa Swidler died suddenly. Now, it may be a big coincidence, but she watched Mike Hendrickson being defrauded out of $200K, Dave Kershaw out of $30,000, Marion Cantwell kidnapped, held captive and beaten until she agreed to give up part of the proceeds of the sale of her home. So she left the cult, and I believe she was going to go to the police or act as a witness to these 3 victims. She suddenly died of internal bleeding. Well, let's just say that was convenient. Then there's Joseph Costantino, who was owed 20 grand. Patton West refused to pay it, and he took her to the Labour Board. He got 10,000 out of the 20 that was owed, and he died shortly afterwards of prostate cancer. Yep, and there's myself. I challenged her. And my murder was announced by Reynolds. That's how certain these idiots are that they're never going to get caught or called to order. And Reynolds announced a campaign of occult attacks against me and my family, which he states quite clearly were intended to have me react to them in a way that would send me to jail, because Reynolds and 30 others in the cult would turn up and say, "Oh no, Patton West is so kind and gentle. She's our leader. We're sheep, or whatever she tells us to do or think or whatever. We respond quickly or else." There's no statute of limitations on terrorism. So yes, Patton West will go to any lengths to stop the truth getting out about her. Hey, but don't take my word for it. Don't take John Mark Young's word for it. Don't take the word of 10s, 20s, 30s, 40s of other witnesses who will all tell you the same thing. Let's hear from Patton West herself. Here's her response to me going to law to sue her for fraud. Bearing in mind, during this conversation, she admitted she defrauded me, but said she didn't see herself writing out a check for $50,000. This is the level of, contempt Patton West feels for her victims, including those who give her money. But let's hear from the master manipulator herself.
It doesn't matter what is actually true.
And when I announced I was going to go ahead and sue her, this was her response.
Because I feel stabbed in the back by you, John. I feel literally stabbed in the heart, stabbed in the back. I feel fucked up the ass. I feel so fucked over by you.
Listen,
I'm not going to take this laying down. If you want to sue, let's go so fucking down and dirty. Huge expenses, John. And it isn't going to come out of my pocket. It will come out of yours.
And that's exactly what happened. I sued Patton West for fraud in 2003, and I got judgment in 2008 in the amount of $700,000 plus for costs and damages, etc. Droid Williams stepped up to the plate, sent me that email pledging $2 million to fund her lawsuits against her victims, but obviously me being the premier victim. In December 2006, probably about 2 years, 18 months before I got judgment, the occult, hidden under the radar violence started. It actually started on the 26th of December 2006. Patton West is no respecter of holidays. And those attacks against me, my wife and children have continued for the past 19 years. Then add 2 murder attempts, add countless examples of defamation, not just from her, but from the sheeple in her cult. On the screen now is one such example from Jack West, her partner in crime and former husband. When I first saw this, I couldn't stop laughing. I mean, the lies that these idiots spew, believing that nobody is ever going to question them. I believe this was posted around the 2007-2008 timeline when Reynolds and Williams and other members of the cult were all putting up their statements on our website, denying the crimes that they actually know she has committed. Let's see what Jack West has to say in the first paragraph. My name is Jack West, and as a previous board member of the non-profit Divine Unity and Sacred Arts Institute, I offer my statements to refute the despicable and unfounded accusations that John Watson has made about Dr. Devra West Soraya Ma. Let's pause here for a minute, because as a former director of the Divine Unity and Sacred Arts Institute, Jack West would have been aware that in 2004, January, the Secretary of State for Montana struck off that charity because of their fraud. Their fraud. Jack West fraud, Patton West fraud. They both had checkbooks for the charity. The charity's name wasn't on the checkbooks. Their names were on the checkbooks. Secondly, Devra West is not a doctor, unless you count the certificate degrees that she's awarded herself. During my lawsuit, my first lawyer asked proof that she did have a doctorate, and she said that the certificates were lost in a flood in Nevada. Don't have many floods in Nevada. But these people lie so easily and believably. Unless, of course, there's a mountain of evidence to contradict their lies. Jack West goes on to say, even though I am her ex-husband, I am stepping forward because I am outraged that he has orchestrated implausible raft of tabloid-style allegations. Let's pause there a second. Remember in court on July 12th, Patton West accused me of being a tabloid reporter based in London. Lie. I guess Jack West got his script from his then wife. He goes on to say, I am outraged that he's orchestrated implausible raft of tabloid-style allegations based solely on his own malicious scripting of trumped-up gossip and calculated deception. I asked the public viewing this video and viewing the underlying documents, and I especially asked the FBI, the police, and the Arizona, Montana state governments to decide whether, based on the amount of evidence that is available, whether what I am saying is true or what Jack West is saying is true. In other words, is there any evidence to back up what I'm saying about Patton West? Well, of course there is, and it comes from a multitude of sources, not least from her employees and students, and her many visits to court as the defendant in mainly fraud-related lawsuits, except for the conviction for assault on Dr. Cole. Now we come to the point. Continuing on. There is nothing in his account of Dr. West's circumstances that bears any resemblance to the truth of her situation. She remains as utterly free of wrongdoing and as ethically virtuous as any human being can be. I encourage you to visit our rebuttal site, our programming, propaganda and lying site, which we use to suck in wealthy spiritual seekers that are then processed through the meat grinder out the other end. And if any of them go to the courts or complain to the police, my wife will take care of them. They may be murdered, because people who oppose Patton West, according to Jack West's statement to me in 2002, are murdered. They die suddenly, to be clear. He goes on to say in the second paragraph, the truth of Watson's malevolence. Yeah, if you turn that around a little bit, what he means is that I'm malevolent for telling the truth. Watson's entire psychotic slander campaign smacks of a modern-day Salem witch hunt that has been deliberately plastered all over the internet. I stand by the truth. I'm quite happy to present all of this to the authorities, the FBI, the state governments, the police, and they can decide for themselves. I won't go on and read it. It's just a bunch of lies. And I'd say she got down and dirty. I mean, it's all there. There's more than enough here to convict her of racketeering, but there's so much more evidence, and I want to get it all out to make sure when this happens, it's an open and shut case, not just against Patton West, but against the senior members of her cult who have funded her, lied for her, threatened victims for her, defamed victims for her, and so on. So on in Reynolds' case, announcing their murder. This is already 49 minutes long, so I'm going to move on to part 8, and there will definitely be a part 9. So stand by for more insights into the self-appointed planetary regent's criminal racketing business model.